Hey everybody, welcome back to World History with Mr. Finn. We're talking about ancient Greece today. We talked a little bit about the ancient Minoans and Mycenaeans and about the culture of the Greeks. And your assignment was to look at the Odyssey and the Iliad. Just give me a little description, a summary based on Homer's writing of his epics, terms that you will be using for your quiz coming up. But today we're going to talk about these various polis, or these city units that we talked about in the last class. So a polis is, and you already have this in your notes, a independent city-state that was in ancient Greece. And they were different from one another, and they all had their own governments and their own way of living. However, they all had the same language and religion and I guess really customs of civilization, which made them all part of the Greek civilization and beginning of Western civilization. So, to give you an idea of a time, we're talking now about around 750 BC. Now, if you remember, we were talking a little bit about dates with Egypt and ancient Samaria. We would have to go way back, way back, to like the Great Pyramids, for example, in 2500 BC. So, in the scheme of things, the ancient Greeks, although ancient to us, are going to be relatively newer than Samaria and Egypt in the early civilizations that we talked about. And so again, this is going to be the beginning of Western civilization. Around 750 BC is when we're going to start to see the polis in ancient Greece that you might have heard of, like Athens or Sparta. And that's what we're going to be talking today about, like, what are these polis, what would they have looked like, and your assignment will be to take a look at some images. But to begin, in every polis you would have had an acropolis. An acropolis, for our terms and definitions, is going to be a hilltop, basically meeting place. Let's call it a meeting place. But it was used for a lot of things, so that's why the definition's kind of hard. For us, we're going to put it as a hilltop meeting place, but it did serve a lot of purposes. So it was the place where everyone would take place in government. So in ancient Greece, the adult males would all take part in running the polis, which is different than the early civilizations we talked about, whether it was Egypt with a pharaoh, or Hammurabi, who was a king, or other autocrats, or people who are one person in charge, like a king. In Greece, you're going to find that everybody takes part in running the polis. And so this is different because now this is what's called a democracy, which we'll talk about, but we have a democracy where the people rule. Not just one person rules, but the people decide what is going to happen in their own place. So an acropolis could be used for a lot of things. One, where this meeting place where the men would go to determine what decisions need to be made, maybe changes of laws, maybe going to war, all the things that a government would make decisions on. But it would also be a place where if they were attacked, everyone could go to the Acropolis because, again, it was on a hilltop, and that would be easier to defend, and you could protect yourself. And so every polis would have an Acropolis. Beneath the Acropolis, so as you went down the sides of the hilltop of the Acropolis, you would find an Agora. This is a market place. Now, a marketplace, I'm assuming most of you know that already, but a marketplace would be where things were sold. Whether it was food or goods or anything that was brought in, trade goods from other places. The Greeks, as we're going to get a little bit more into the future, let me get out of the way for you. As we get into the future of ancient Greece, we're going to start to see that because of its geographical location on all these small islands, I said this before, an archipelago, they're going to have to go out into different places, but that's going to bring them in contact with a lot of different things, a lot of different ideas. So you would see this polis. There would be an acropolis on the top of this hill. Beneath that, there would be a marketplace beneath where people would be selling goods and buying goods. Something that every citizen would be a part of would also be the military. Now, if you remember, every polis was its own little entity, its independent state. Now, with a whole bunch of them, we're talking about hundreds of these polis that make up ancient Greece. there's going to be a lot of conflict, and they're going to come into wars with each other. They'll have allies, and fighting is nonstop with these polis. It was a very delicate balance of, keeping peace. So the military was super important. So hoplites are actually soldiers. Soldiers that would participate as citizen militia, basically. You would be anything really, but you would take part in the military as a hoplite. Now, soldiers are going to fight in a very distinct manner, which is a phalanx. A phalanx is a formation. Making it very easy for you guys on these definitions. So a phalanx is a military formation. Let me just put the military here. Military. That's a military formation. Now, what does a phalanx look like? So, if you were fighting a Greek polis, the men would line up, my stick figure men, would line up in a line, and they would be all carrying large shields to form a wall, and they would have spears like this, that if they walked towards you, and I don't know if that's large enough, I think it is. If they were walking towards you, they'd be walking towards you with their shield, and they would have a long spear, so I don't write on myself. And if I'm all next to my other soldiers, as we come towards you, we can all, block you with our shields, and we can all thrust forward with our spears. And so this formation was very, very, it's almost advanced for the time. It seems pretty simple to us, like, hey, it makes sense. You get in a line, and you can go push people backwards. However, wars in the past have been fought where I have a bunch of people, you have a bunch of people, ready, go. And we run at you, you run at us, and then whoever's left standing at the end wins. Whereas this is a new military tactic that is going to allow the Greeks to really expand, be strong, and it's the first time that we really see military tactics in this way, which is very, it's a new innovation as far as military goes. So this is a brief kind of look at what an ancient Greek polis would have been. People would have been there, the men would have been in charge, the men would have been making decisions, people, all of them would have been taking part in the decisions. These polis, and this is important, are going to range. They're not all the same. So all the polis are different. They have their different ways of doing things. But we're talking about, let's just say the smallest, we'll pick a number, a few hundred people would be small. A mid-range would be, let's say, 5,000 to, 50,000. You might have that would be a medium. A one like today, which you're going to look at, Athens. Athens actually had 300,000 would be a large. And that would really, I'm going to put largest, would be around 300,000 as far as our sizes of these polis, meaning that these polis are going to range from just a few hundred people to a few thousand to many thousand people. But today, what I want you to do is to get an idea of what we're looking at, because we're not in class, is Athens. And this is normally I would be able to show you pictures, but now you'll have to look it up for yourself. Ancient Athens. I put ancient there, and that's important because Athens still does exist today. So you don't want to put in Athens and see modern day people walking around, eating at restaurants and driving cars and stuff like that. So you're going to type in ancient Athens, and you're going to go to images. And I want you to look at some of the images. I want you to pick five images, and in 3 to 5 sentences, describe what you're seeing. So I want you to be able to take a look. So again, if you were in class, I would have the projector up and I would be able to show you some different images so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. Because with ancient history, it's hard if you don't see it. If I can tell you about things, but if you don't look at it, you don't really have a mindset of what we're talking about. So I want you to look up ancient Athens. I want you to find 5 images, and I want you to tell me what you are seeing. Describe what you are seeing in the image. Maybe like what are they wearing? What's the building look like? What's going on in the image? That is what I want for today's class. Now remember, you guys have been doing great getting in on today, on the actual day of class. So continue that. Doing great work. I like what I'm seeing so far, and I'll see you next class.